Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good following morning. I say that every week, but this week it has particular resonance because I just got off a plane from New York and I'm completely jet lagged and I don't know what time it is. So my body clock is saying to me, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good following morning. And I'm saying, shut up, body clock, get back to work and do your AMA. So here I am, just got off the plane an hour ago, only lost one of my pieces of luggage, doing all right. I have to say that's not a bad ratio. I'll take it. And there you go. So actually I got some signs. We all know about my sign collection / obsession / fixation. So I got some signs and I packed them all together and that's what didn't come. So I got my suitcases and I got the suitcases, but I did not get the signs. But I'm sure I trust, and I don't want to say it and I don't want to make light of it, but when you're flying Lufthansa, the thing that you count on is efficiency. And I don't want to make light of it, but anytime that I do any contact with Germany and Lufthansa, and I fly Lufthansa a lot, I'm always thinking, wait a minute, now you've picked the time not to be efficient. You could have been less efficient a few other times in history. But anyway, not to make light. Good morning, Marcel Zielinski, my friend, my mentor, my hero, Marcel. Good to see you. Linda, does anybody really know what time it is? Oh, we're getting all philosophical and existential. I like it. Benji Levitt, I saw Seinfeld. I will talk about that in a moment. I did see Seinfeld. Saul Schachter, good morning from New York, home of the future Stanley Cup hockey champions. Future, I don't know. Saul, I am Knicks, Yankees, Jets, Islanders. It's a strange mix because usually you're Jets, Mets, whatever, but I am an Islander fan. So I'm with you on that one. Saul just wrote an article for the said he wrote an essay for the Washington Post called The Joy of Jet Lag about what you do. And our friend Dan Oren, who is a professor at Yale of psychiatry, wrote a book about jet lag and is a leading expert on jet lag. But Benji, good morning, Ryan. Nice to be on different time zones. We were just on the same one. I will talk about what Benji is asking me about, my impromptu meeting with Seinfeld. So I was at the Apple store on the Upper East Side. I had an appointment to go look at a couple things. These days, you can't just walk in and buy something. You can't even just walk in and give Apple money. You have to make an appointment so that they allow you to come in and give them huge, obnoxious amounts of money. So that is what it is. So anyway, I'm waiting outside the Apple store for them to let me in, and I see somebody who looks very much like Jerry Seinfeld, but like exactly like he looked on the show. So not an older version of Jerry Seinfeld, like a frozen in time version of Jerry Seinfeld. And I'm thinking, should I go over? And I'm like, I have a good thing to talk to him about. So I go over to Jerry and I say, oh, hi, Jerry. I'm Jonathan. I'm a big fan of Seinfeld. He goes, oh, thank you very much. And I go, and I live in Krakow. And then I see him gets a little more interested. And I go, I got to tell you that in Krakow, we're all big fans of the episode with the pony. So there's a famous Krakow episode, I think season 2, where Jerry's at a dinner party and someone talks about horses and there's someone owns racehorses and something. And it gets to be the conversation of Jerry and Elaine say, I hated kids that had horses and ponies. Who had a pony? Those kids. I hate anyone that ever had a pony. And then the host, this like 90-year-old woman says, I had a pony in this thick accent. When I was a little girl in Krakow, we all had ponies. And she storms off. And Jerry's like, what are the odds? And who thinks an immigrant has a pony? Why do you move from a pony country to a non-pony country? So all of this. So I said, Jerry, I've got to tell you that, besides being that they don't all have ponies, you were right to question that. So we talked and he goes, oh, are you from Krakow? And I said, no, I'm from New York and I made Aliyah in Israel. And he's like, Krakow. I go, what do you do? I go, oh, I'm running the Jewish community center there. I go, have you been? He goes, no. I said, oh, you should come. People finding out about their Jewish identities. It's pretty exciting. Plus we have right down the road from Auschwitz, so you can see that. And he goes, oh, okay. And then his wife came out and I was just saying, oh, I was just talking to him. I'm from Krakow, the episode. And he's like, yeah, she doesn't know about that. So I guess she's not a big Seinfeld fan. And then I said, oh, can I get a photo? He goes, no, I don't like to do photos. I said, yeah, no problem, Jerry. See you in Krakow. He said, maybe someday. So that's my Seinfeld story. I realized that he doesn't do the photos. I forgot, and I asked him because, you know, who remembers about these things? So there you go. Benji asks, was I starstruck? Come on, Benji. We know better than to ask me. He's a comedian. I'm not in the field. You would be starstruck because he's someone at the top of your field. When I meet rock star JCC's directors, and then I'm a little bit starstruck. But no, I wasn't starstruck. I just thought it was cool that there was the Krakow connection, because I mean, I would have gone up to him anyway, but I wouldn't have had something sort of interesting to say. So I thought that not only did I have a conversation with Seinfeld, who really doesn't, you know, he's not one of those people that loves everyone talking to him in the street, but Seinfeld asked me questions. He was an active participant in our conversation, which was for me very, very exciting. So that was one of the highlights. It was great. All the friends that I was with, that hosted me in Kasha, that took such good care of us. Jeffrey and Lori Rolat in Florida, Cheryl and Phil in New York. We met with the Spitzers. We saw Elizabeth Shanzer. We saw Chuck Fishman. We really we were able to see people. Last time we were there in November, we didn't really meet with anybody. So that was exciting. Yeah, so that was a highlight of the trip. Really, for me, was seeing friends. Ray Allen, which I talked about last week, so I don't need to talk about that again, but that was pretty cool. And I think Kasha eating ice cream, it was even for Kasha, and I think I've talked about Kasha's love of ice cream, put it that way, but she outdid herself this trip, and it got to a point where she was even at a certain point sick of all the ice cream and had to switch to frozen yogurt, which is not exactly a giant jump. But it was good to be in New York. The weather was it was really, really hot. You kind of realize why everybody escapes from New York in the summer if they can. Florida was a lot of fun. It was raining, but it was great staying with Jeffrey and Lori, and we just had it was good. You know, Florida's always a lot of fun, but it's good to be home. I have to say that I came into the JCC after dropping off luggage and walked into the building. Good morning, Bobby. Walked into the building and the seniors were meeting. So we're having them meet once in a while, and there were like 20 or so seniors, survivors in the building. So what a welcome home. They weren't here for me, but what perfect timing. What a welcome to come back into the JCC and to see our beloved seniors here. So that was made me smile, and helped me fight past the jet lag. So a lot's been going on. Ride for the Living Global Challenge has kicked off. So Ray Allen and I kicked it off, but also Rabbi Avi did the real official kickoff at Auschwitz-Birkenau. He lit candles, and then he for all the rest of us that aren't able and weren't able to do that, Rabbi Avi rode from Auschwitz-Birkenau to left Auschwitz-Birkenau. He started the ride. We didn't need him to do the whole ride. I will do the whole ride. I'll be announcing that very soon, and I'll put it out there on social media and send out an email and start my fundraising this year. I am actually going to ride from Auschwitz-Birkenau on behalf of everybody who can't do it. And my partner this year will be Bernard Offen. So Bernard is not joining me on my tandem bike as he has done for the last couple of years, but Bernard is walking. As we know, Ride for the Living Global Challenge, walk, ride, or run the 60-mile distance. I will ride the 60-mile distance from Auschwitz-Birkenau, and Bernard will help me out. My teammate, Bernard Offen, 92-year-old Bernard Offen, just turned 92, will be walking around. He walks every day. He's doing it for the ride, for the Global Challenge, around where he lives near Palm Springs in the desert in California. So he'll have to keep well hydrated. So I'm going to announce that very soon. I'll put that out there. So anybody who's watching, first of all, please sign up for Ride for the Living Global Challenge and get your friends to support you, and then you can support me. That would be great. So I'll let you know where we are. We have 2,800 participants signed up so far. We've raised 46% of our goal. We have a $200,000 goal. We've raised 91,000. So we need to keep raising. Those of you raising money, be even more annoying to your friends and pester them for money. We have 35 countries represented, including Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, New Zealand, some cool countries out there. We have done 6,500 miles. And still plenty of time to sign up. So please do that. Sign up. Support the JCC. If you have survivors in need in your community, no problem. Raise money, support your survivors. We want the Ride for the Living Global Challenge to raise awareness and to raise support for survivors, whether they're here in Krakow or in your own community. We love our survivors, but we love all survivors around the world. And because we are near Auschwitz, we feel a special responsibility to advocate for the survivors. And in that spirit, it's also why we started Holocaust Survivor Day, which is June 24th this year. Survivor Shabbat will be June 26th, a day to honor the survivors. I've talked about it a lot. We have a lot of people coming on board, all the different organizations. We just, this week, Deborah Lipstadt and Deborah Lipstadt, Holocaust historian, very famous author, and subject of the movie Denial, is on board on our committee. Stephen Smith from the Shoah Foundation, Claims Conference, UJA, the federations, JCCA. We really have the whole world is joining us. And very excitingly, I'm not sure if I spoke about it before, but it's worth mentioning again. There is an event in Israel on June 24th, organized by Colette Avital, where she will bring 900 Holocaust survivors. Yes, 900 Holocaust survivors to Habima, the Israeli National Theater, and will honor them with cabinet ministers. We're hoping that the new president of Israel, Isaac Buji Herzog, will be there to honor the survivors. Rabbi Avi's going. I think Rabbi Paley's going to fly over from Budapest. And today or tomorrow, the latest, if I crash soon, I will buy my tickets and make sure to be there. And what an honor and what a privilege to be in a room with 900 or so Holocaust survivors. So if your community isn't involved yet, then let's get your community involved. And even so, on an individual level, do you live next door to a Holocaust survivor, somebody down the hall? You know what? On June 24th, knock on their door and say, today is a day for you. Bake them some cookies, give them a flower. And we're coming up with a great something else. We'll have an event on June 24th, holocaustsurvivorday.com. And also Rabbi Avi came up with an excellent idea, and he's working on a prayer for survivors, and a prayer that may we have the strength and the tenacity and the courage of the survivors. So we're going to release that prayer too, a prayer for all of us to say on Holocaust Survivor Day. So something that we couldn't be more excited and more proud of this idea that we came up with. Special shout out to Sebastian Rudol, really one of the architects of the idea and of Holocaust Survivor Day. It takes it takes a village to take care of a community, and it takes Sebastian Rudol to come up with good ideas and join me at all the fun stuff that we do. So special shout out to Sebastian. Oh, false modesty, Sebastian. We don't like it. Sita, hi Sita. My dad is watching. Hi Dad. Good to have you watching live. Hope you're doing well, Dad. And with that, is there anything else that I needed to cover? Most important things, Holocaust Survivor Day, ice cream, and all this. I will introduce my guest. My guest is a very good friend, a wonderful guy. He is Mark Medin. He is the Executive Vice President at Financial Resource Development at UJA, Federation of New York, which is an amazing organization. Before that, he was the CEO and Executive Vice President of the American Friends of Bar-Ilan, and then the Executive Vice President at Hillelu, and then came back to UJA, and now, as I said, is the Executive Vice President of UJA, which is amazing, the largest, world's largest local philanthropy, I think it's called, and doing amazing good work in New York and around the world, and a great supporter and partner of JCC Krakow. Mark, my good friend, it's an honor. I see that you're back in the office.
Only in the office for you, my friend.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't want you to catch me in my living room at home, so I came into the office for you.
Wow, I am honored, and I came, and I flew back. I thought, you know what, doing it from a remote location doesn't have enough gravitas, so I flew back to Krakow to be able to interview you.
Now, on a more serious note, we're not officially returning to the office until September 13th. Most of New York City, as you know, is slowly coming back. Most Jewish organizations are picking kind of a post-Rosh Hashanah time to officially return to the office, but we have voluntarily opened the office for those people who want to begin to return. We're encouraging all of our staff to return once a week, once every other week, so that people can get accustomed to the commute, get their computers up and running again, overcome some of those fears and hesitations about being back in an office environment. And it feels great. It really it feels amazing to be back in the office and see your familiar surroundings and do your work from a place where you're supposed to be doing your work. So very excited to be back in the office. It's my 5th time back in the office since March of last year.
Oh wow, that's something. Well, that's a shehechianu moment for you. And you know, it's interesting when you got so used to seeing people in all these different locations, and then when you see them back in their usual place, you're like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Now the context is
it throws you off.
Yeah. So Mark, I want to talk really a lot about UJA and different stuff. And you really have an interesting perspective on the Jewish world as UJA is sort of involved locally and also just internationally. But a little bit maybe about you. What were you like as a kid, Mark Medin?
I was a rowdy kid.
Yeah.
Grew up in South Africa. Sports was a very big part of growing up in South Africa. It's a sports crazed country. I thank my genes for having me born with good sports ability. So I was one of these kids who spent every waking moment playing sport. We didn't get television in South Africa until I was 10 years old. So, you know, didn't grow up sitting in front of a TV screen. I grew up outside, beautiful weather, great friends, great neighborhood, great community, and playing sport and breaking lots of windows as balls from the backyard kept hitting the windows of the house. Was not the good, hardworking, studious kid, but thankfully did very well in school and enjoyed a very active and sports-filled young life.
And as long as you were breaking windows accidentally, I think that will give you a pass on that.
My parents didn't always believe it was accidental, but you know, we'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. And what about you? Talk a little bit about your Jewish background. How observant were you? How connected were you Jewishly? What was your Jewish upbringing like?
So most people in South Africa grew up with a very deeply connected Jewish life and a very strong connection to Israel and Zionism. You know, as you meet South African Jews around the world today, the vast majority of them are very active in their local community, active in supporting Israel, travel to Israel regularly. And so we were, you know, a very traditional, typical Jewish family, like most South African Jewish families. You know, Friday night Shabbos dinner was mandatory, but Saturday was a day for playing sports. Yeah. You know, the shul that most people went to was Orthodox, but you drove to shul, you know, to get there. So it was a very traditional, committed, involved Jewish life. Traveled to Israel for the first time when I was 13 to celebrate my bar mitzvah. Fell in love with Israel at a very young age, and kind of a very similar trajectory to lots of South African Jews who grew up with a deep connection to a tightly knit Jewish community and a tight connection to Israel. And I'm appreciative of what it's given me and the ongoing connection that I have to the Jewish world.
You know, you touched on something interesting for me, which is how engaged South Africans generally are in community life. I remember when I was in Australia, and you know, as you know, more and more South Africans moving, and it used to be only Sydney was very South African. Now even Melbourne becoming more, and balancing the Polish aspect with the Litvak. Of course, the South Africans almost exclusively Litvak community. But you know, I was talking to somebody about, oh, what's the community like here in Sydney and all this. They said, you go to the schools, all the teachers are from South Africa, the people who are running, the people who are active, lay leaders, professionals, and all of the Jewish organizations are South African. I think they're just this sort of, you know, Australians are generally laid back with stuff. South Africans not exactly as laid back, and just this strong connection or impetus to be involved in a communal way.
You know, I think it's a very good analogy and a good understanding of the community. And there are a handful of pockets around, you know, around the US as well, in San Diego, in La Jolla, very actively involved South African community with a large concentration. In Toronto, a very large, strong community where South Africans have taken real leadership roles as well. And I think you'll find, you know, in many areas of the country where there've been large influx of South Africans, they're playing key leadership roles. And even here in the New York Jewish community, there are many South Africans who have taken a very strong leadership role. Even here at UJA Federation, Linda Morels is a former chairman of the board of the organization. very active, committed South African Jewish family, and many others who've achieved very important roles of leadership in our community.
Now, I think that, to me, when I look around the Jewish world, I sometimes think if you have people coming from a tiny community, it's tough to develop a certain skills and to have a certain idea of responsibility toward the community. I mean, overall. And if you're from a very, very large community, it's so split, it's kind of hard to feel that you're part of one thing. But, when I think of a community like Cleveland in the United States, which is sort of a medium-sized Jewish community, and you look at leadership around around the United States, and you see half the Jewish organization in the United States led by people who kind of went through the Cleveland system, it seems like that there's a strong grounding, and this kind of medium-sized community maybe allows you to have all that you need in a community, but yet not be overwhelmed by the size of it.
I think that's a great analogy, and even today, the remaining Jewish community in South Africa is very committed, very involved. Almost every kid goes to Jewish day school. Most people live in tightly knit Jewish communities. Most families keep kosher homes, an abundance of kosher life and Jewish life. And yet, in the diaspora, much like the Cleveland community, there are Jews who grew up in Cleveland in leadership roles all over the country today, and there are Jews all over the world today in strong leadership roles because of having grown up with that very deep connection and commitment to Jewish life as part of the South African community. So I feel blessed to have had that opportunity, and I feel doubly blessed to have been able to make Aliyah to the great United States of America as a teenager to begin the next stage of my life.
So that was my next question. When did you come to the U.S.? What was that move? What did that entail?
We moved to the U.S. when I was in high school. I was the oldest of three kids. My parents were part of that generation of South Africans in the late 70s, early 80s, coming out of the internal rioting and civil unrest that began in the mid 70s, who weren't sure what the future looked like. It didn't see putting me and my siblings into the South African Army. And so as the oldest of three kids in 1980 in high school, family moved. We made Aliyah to the great Jewish Mecca of Miami Beach. And it was quite a move. I'm very fortunate. As I said earlier, I was a very active athlete. And so soccer was just becoming a big thing in America in the late 70s, early 80s. I was a good soccer player by South African standards. I wasn't a superstar. I came to North Miami Beach High School and was a superstar by American standards. Wow. And so it was a very easy acculturation for me into American society, because just when soccer was becoming really popular, they had this foreigner from a land where soccer was much more popular, who really knew the game well, understood the game, had a funny accent. And so I had a very easy acculturation into American society. But moving as a high schooler, which is not always an easy time to move, but I was blessed because of my athletic ability to have had an easy integration into a new life in America.
So I knew you as a runner. Now I'm getting the backstory that the running is just part of it.
The strength, the athletic strength in my legs from my younger years came back to be supportive as I became a marathon runner in my later years.
Yeah, no, and I remember that period very well in the United States, and in some ways, soccer, football, soccer on a youth level, on a school level, became what people anticipated. The days of the Cosmos and Giorgio Canaglia and Franz Beckenbauer and Pele, of course, and all of these stars that played here. But on a professional level, it's grown. But I think it never went as fast as people thought in the early 80s, when 80,000 people were coming to see the Cosmos in Giant Stadium or in the Meadowlands, I guess it was.
Yeah. Well, given the expertise you seem to have in some of the great foreign stars from the years, I'll tell you an interesting story. There was a great German center forward named Gerd Müller. You may remember him. Played for Germany for many years. Gerd Müller played for the Fort Lauderdale Strikers at the same time when Pele and others were playing for the Cosmos. And I was on a youth training team that used to train with the Fort Lauderdale Strikers. And so I spent many a day marking Gerd Müller, who was one of the most famous forwards of all time, one of the greatest goal scorers in soccer history. And let's just say he continued to score lots of goals when I was the high school defender who was marking him in practice sessions.
You gave him the confidence, maybe, that
there you go. Even as he was aging out of playing in Europe and playing in America, he still had the ability.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If he can score on Mark Medin,
he must have been world class.
Exactly. So tell me, you start at UJA, and then you go to Hillel and the American Friends of Bar-Ilan, and then back at UJA. So let's focus, because to me, UJA is a fascinating organization, institution, machine, the way that it works on so many different levels. First of all, I mentioned before, the world's largest local philanthropy, which, by the way, it's a very good line. Can you talk about that for a second? Yeah. What that means?
So UJA Federation of New York raises between $200 and $250 million every year, purely from the Jewish community in New York. As an organization raising north of $200 million a year, we're the largest local philanthropy in the world, meaning there's no other organization in the world of any kind that raises that kind of money from only the community in their city. There are institutions, museums and universities that raise more than that, but they raise from people all over the country.
Right.
But there's no other organization of any kind that raises more money from the community in that city alone than we do. And in addition to being the largest local philanthropy, we're also the organization in the Jewish world that raises more money than any Jewish organization globally. So, the $200 to $250 million a year that we raise in New York makes us the largest Jewish fundraising organization of any kind. There are organizations such as the JDC, the Joint and the Jewish Agency that have larger budgets, but significant portions of their budget come from the government, from the Israeli government. So if you take out the government funding, as a pure fundraising organization that has to raise every penny from philanthropists, we're the largest Jewish fundraising organization in the world. But as the person charged with raising all the money, I much prefer to talk about what we do with the money. The impact of what we're able to make possible with those kinds of resources is what makes it such a special place, and is what enables us to raise that kind of money, because the community and the leading philanthropists in New York City and in the suburbs have such trust and in the capacity that we have to put their money to work in the most meaningful way across such a broad portfolio of areas. That's what enables us to raise that kind of money.
Well, I have to say, I feel like I'm pretty familiar with UJA. I have so many friends and people that support us.
You're a fixture in our place.
A fixture. I'm very connected to luckily, I've been blessed to meet a lot of great people at UJA. But I have to say that I do want to talk about programming and what you do, and I have it here. But as somebody, I didn't realize that I was talking to you, I know that you're responsible for the overall fundraising at UJA, but I didn't realize that there was no Jewish organization in the world that is raising more money than you guys. So I am speaking to the person responsible for raising the most money in the Jewish world overall. Wow.
Let's move on. You said it once, great for my ego. Now let's move on. Let's talk about the more serious things. Like, what do we do with that money? How do we change lives? How do we impact people?
I promise you we will. But as somebody who is, you please understand that as somebody who gets up in the middle of the night and thinks of this person I forgot to call, who spends every waking second, really, not every, because I get it's true, as I'm also focused on the programming. I don't want it to sound like I'm only focused on the fundraising, but unfortunately, when you're in my job, a lot of it, not unfortunately, I love doing it, but a lot of it is fundraising. So we'll come back to the fundraising, because I am curious about that. But let's talk about UJ, because the balance. In other words, people think, oh, the local federation, of course, you're giving to the schools and the JCCs, and there's survivors that are in need, and all of these important things. But there's a balance at UJA between the local and the international. In other words, UJA has people full-time, still does, or it's originally employees in Israel. So I mean, the global scale of UJA is something that befits New York, the largest Jewish community. But let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the balance between the local versus the international. We can also talk about some things that you're excited about that you guys are doing. But we have to also come back to the fundraising. Sure.
So we're happy to come back to it. There's a three-legged stool on which our portfolio is built. I think it's important to kind of lay that table out first. The three legs of the stool are caring for people in need, both Jews and non-Jews in New York City and around the world, strengthening and building Jewish life and Jewish identity, and then connecting Jews globally. And so the largest piece of our portfolio is the caring portfolio, taking care of Holocaust survivors, feeding the hungry, taking care of the homeless, providing cash assistance for the unemployed, helping children with special needs. That whole portfolio of what we consider the human service agenda is kind of the largest piece of what we do, primarily in New York, but also in Israel and in the former Soviet Union and in parts of the world where there are Jews that face, real human service and social needs. And we can talk much more about the specifics of that later. The second piece of the portfolio, the strengthening and building of Jewish community and Jewish life, is an essential part of what we do. And that entails everything from supporting the JCC in Krakow, which is an important institution that's building Jewish life in Krakow, to supporting local Jewish day schools in our community, supporting the local JCCs, supporting the local Hillels on campus, supporting Birthright, and supporting summer camp, and supporting all kinds of initiatives that build and strengthen Jewish education, Jewish pride, Jewish identity, and Jewish continuity, again, primarily in New York, but also in Krakow and in Moscow and in St. Petersburg and in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem as well. And then the third leg of the stool is that global connection, identifying key partners around the world, like the JCC of Krakow, and recognizing the importance of both funding them directly so that they can do the work they do, but also giving them the hechsher as the largest Jewish organization in the world, and as an organization that is staffed with such outstanding professionals working on the programmatic side. When an organization gets a hechsher, that they're getting money from UJA, it's the first thing many organizations do when they're out pitching other donors. And as you well know, as the prolific fundraiser you are, building Jewish life in Krakow, the importance of being able to say to donors, I'm a grantee of UJ Federation of New York, is almost worth as much as the dollars we give you, because most donors understand we've done our due diligence, we're fully aware of and comfortable with the governance, the accountability, the transparency, the efficacy, the mission of the organization. And for donors who care about those issues, knowing that we've signed off and we're supporting a specific organization somewhere in the world is a hugely valuable stamp of approval. So those are kind of the three broad legs of the organization that we focus on. There's a complex process of how we come to our funding decisions, funding allocations, how we support all the different agencies, how we divide up the money. But suffice to say, there are far more requests for support from UJA in those three areas than we're able to allocate, despite the fact that we're allocating so much money every year. But we think we found a very good balance of distribution between domestic needs in New York, overseas needs, Israel, former Soviet Union, social services, Jewish education, etc.
Absolutely. I think that, to me, the analogy, it maybe like in the UK when you have somebody who's the chocolatier under appointment to the Queen, or somebody, the one who's making baskets. Then you say, oh, if you see that, that they're legit.
There you go, the chocolatier to the Queen. That's going to be the new line I'm going to use going forward. I'll credit you with that one.
Please use it. Please use it.
Yeah. And let me just use one other analogy, which is also important for people to understand, and it kind of takes us back to the fundraising side. There are so many great organizations today focusing on the hundreds of different issues in the Jewish world, just like there are hundreds of great stocks that you could buy, for your personal investment portfolio. We consider ourselves, the ultimate mutual fund, the ultimate asset manager, in the same way that most people today have found it's a lot safer, a lot smarter, and a lot more profitable to invest your money with an asset manager who's widely distributed across all different asset classes. And so when you invest as a philanthropist with UJA, you're investing across all asset classes. You're getting impact with local, with international, with Israel, with human services, with Jewish education, with the elderly, with children, with summer camp, with high school kids. So it's almost like that analogy of saying, do I want to go out and pick 20 stocks myself and have to do the due diligence on all 20 of them and take the risk on all 20 of them? Or do I want to put all my money into one stock and take that risk? Or do I want to, buy an S&P 500 fund, or go to a well-endowed research manager and say, I trust that you're doing all the due diligence, you've got the professional expertise, you're distributing my assets widely across transportation and consumer and foreign and global and large cap and small cap. And that's the way to look at UJA as the largest, most successful asset manager in the philanthropic world.
You know, it's very important that you say that. You touch on something I think very interesting, because in certain ways, the way people give, as we know, is very, very different than the way people used to give. So 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was automatic. You live in New York, you're in the position that you're able to help give some money, that you automatically are writing a check to Federation. You live in Milwaukee, wherever you live, Federation will handle it. They know best. It's easy. They know where the money's going. You don't have the internet. You can't know about a specific school in Israel that's helping integrate Ethiopians that touches you because you knew somebody Ethiopian in high school, whatever, right? The world was very, very different then because we didn't have the information that we have now. And in certain ways, we needed filters. In the same way that you wanted to go to California 20 years ago, you called the travel agent to go book your tickets. You didn't go online because you have the whole world at your fingers. So what you're saying is very, very important, because at the end of the day, and in many places, in many ways, we understand that the giving has shifted to people don't feel as much automatically that they need the in-between, that they need the UJA, that they need the Miami Federation to say, you give us the money and we'll figure out where it goes and we'll show you what we're doing, and we're doing our due diligence, which you aren't able to do because we're a large organization. But people fall in love with projects. They have their pet projects. They want to give things that I know. And at the end of the day, there are costs to what we're doing. So somebody gives us money, we have to, there are obviously costs to administering programs and things. So sometimes people might say, oh, if I give that money directly to Project X, it's better. But you make the convincing, to me, counterpoint, right? But this, which is, wait a minute, sure, that's true. And maybe you also, I would also assume that anybody who's giving money to UJA is also giving money to other, or most people are also giving money to others, but there's no way to reach the entire Jewish world and to have it vetted then by going through, in communities generally, Federation, and in New York, UJA, which is the leading federation.
Right. Our scale and our scope and our size is our greatest asset and also our greatest liability. You so accurately talk about the ability for anybody today to book their own ticket online and cut out the travel agent. In the same way as you can order a pair of Nikes for your kid, you can go online and you can order a pair of Nikes with a purple tongue, an orange lace, a yellow sole, and a blue swoosh, and it arrives tomorrow. And if you don't like it, you send it back. So, we've become such consumers of independence and of personal taste. And so by the same way, if you're a philanthropist who cares about poor kids in South Brooklyn, you can go online, Google poor kids in South Brooklyn, find a small, terrific local charity that's funding poor kids in South Brooklyn and give your money directly. And so you say, so what do you need a central body like Federation for? So that's the liability we face in today's modern world. The strength and the asset, which we believe so firmly in and which keeps us raising so much money, is the ability to both identify the poor kid in South Brooklyn, but also know that if you care about a poor kid in South Brooklyn, you probably also care about a poor kid in South Tel Aviv, and a poor kid in South Moscow, and a poor kid in South Queens. And by giving to us, you're getting a much greater distribution. And if you care about poor kids, you probably also care about poor elderly and poor Holocaust survivors. And so the case we make, getting more difficult to make, but we're still doing it very successfully, is that value of the distribution and the ability to say, support the poor kid in South Brooklyn because you care about that, but also recognize that there are so many other things that you don't even know you care about that you support through a gift to Federation. And we often say it's the people that that are being supported, and all those causes and people and organizations that you didn't even know need support that are being supported. And when you sit down with a donor and you explain this issue to them, they get it. I often say to a donor, Columbia University Hillel and NY Hillel, which both get significant, NYU Hillel gets significant annual support from us, could probably survive if we cut their grants totally, because they have really strong alumni and parent body and student body. We're not going to cut their grants because they're two great Hillels, do great work on campus, but they don't rely on their grant from UJA to support the Jewish community at NYU and Columbia Hillel. But the Hillel at Baruch College and Brooklyn College and Hunter College, which are the local city colleges in the city, which are primarily serving first and second generation immigrant middle class and lower middle class Jewish kids, those Hillels would literally shut their door tomorrow if not for the UJ Federation support, because they don't have large, successful, wealthy alumni networks and families of current kids attending who are wealthy. So if not for us, who would support them? So if you only wanted to support the NYU Hillel or the Columbia Hillel or the Harvard Hillel or the Northwestern Hillel or the Stanford Hillel, because that's where your kid goes to school, who's taking care of all those Jewish kids at Hunter College Hillel and Brooklyn College Hillel, if not for a general gift to UJA Federation, which enables us to then support institutions like that. And so, we talk about how the work we do benefits and helps all of those institutions that are critical to sustaining and supporting Jewish life, but that most philanthropists are not aware of because they're not the sexy, well-known places that are part of their world. And so that's really the incredible value add proposition that a gift to the UJA Federation or any federation makes possible.
Yeah, you make a very convincing argument. And I think there's something else that you're doing, and other federations are doing it as well. I mean, I think that almost everything you're doing, you're just doing it in a larger scale, as you say, and maybe a broader scope and to a deeper depth because you are UJA Federation in New York. But something that I see that you do, and again, not just to compliment you on all this, but that you do very, very well, and I see it from very much from the inside, is that you build community, right? You understand it's not only like, oh, people write a check to UJA and it doesn't matter how many zeros are in that check. That's it. Oh, UJA is doing a great job. UJA is building a community with these people, with like-minded people, with not such like-minded people, exposing them to new ideas, to different things, not only exposing them, our money is supporting this kibbutz in Israel, meet somebody from that kibbutz, but thinkers and important people, important thought leaders in the Jewish community and in the Jewish world, and not only, and going to museums and doing that. And I think that that's something that very, very smart, and that's something that you do that's irreplaceable. In other words, I can go write a check I can say if UJA is giving money to these 5 causes, I'm going to be so smart and just write a check to those 5 causes. But you're missing out on this, being around people who also believe to some degree in what, many of the things that you believe in, and being able to experience life with them. And there's no substitute for that. And that's not something that is replaceable, no matter how much, how powerful your computer.
Jonathan, it's a really important point, and the sense of community is so critical. Every year at the end of the year, we reported how much money we've raised, but we also reported how many people attended our events. And so my operation, very large staff, very large operation to raise, the kind of money we raise. We run about 400 programs or events a year in New York. About 50 to 60 of them are fundraising events, and the other 350 or so are community building events, community outreach events, donor recognition events, prospecting events. And we have about 40,000 people a year that come to these events. And so you talk about building community, really critical for these people that they attend programs, they hear from speakers, they learn about the work we do, they meet like-minded philanthropists, they make friends. And the number of people, and many of them through all of your friends at UJA Federation, who've made their best friends and their lifelong friends through people they met 10 or 15 or 20 years ago at a UJA Federation program, who are like-minded people who care about the strengthening of the Jewish community, care about the work we do, and become real community and family to each other. But that those 40,000 people a year that we touch by coming to our programs is such a key part of building community and building identity. And so I stress to my team all the time how important it is to make sure that we're doing really quality programming, delivering a strong Jewish message, because to many of these people, they may not belong to a synagogue, they may not belong to a JCC. We are their Jewish home. Yeah. And for many of them, the message they hear about, Israel's in crisis, that you're coming to a UJA event, it may be part of our lawyers division, it may be part of our women's campaign, it could be a young leadership program, it could be a young leadership cocktail reception for young leaders to get to know each other. How are we using that gathering of 100 young professionals to teach them about what's happening in Israel, or the growth of anti-Semitism, or the impact of COVID on our community? And how are we using that programmatic time to really strengthen their connection to Jewish life and their commitment to a strong Jewish community? It's not just an event for the sake of an event. It's an event to build community, to educate people, and to drive them towards being more philanthropic. But that sense of community and lifetime friendships that have been built through this organization is parallel. And the other point I'd make is the number of people that have gotten married through a UJA Federation connection is astounding. Part of the reason I'm in the office today is I had a meeting at 9 o'clock this morning with a small group, including one of our most senior lay leaders, a very, very senior member of our lay community. And she met her husband at a UJA Young Leadership event, 35 years ago. And her son, who got married about 18 months ago, maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago, met his wife at a UJA, Young Leadership Shabbat dinner. And so the number of stories we can tell about couples, this is a second generation couple who met through UJA, but that sense of bringing people together, like-minded thinkers, caring about Jews, caring about philanthropy, and ultimately becoming Jewish families is a great untold story of our success.
No, and I think it's money well spent. I see it, and especially I guess for me, the thing that I'm hearing most about is from women's philanthropy that I'm closest to, and just the it's a staggering amount of events, and the level is just every time I hear, oh, I'm on a call with this one and Barry White or whoever, all these people that are just of the moment and leading voices are there, and I think that's what makes me bullish on this idea of being this organization that people give money to and then you distribute it, because the trend in many ways for all of us across our life is going that because of the powerful computers that are in our pockets all the time, that we need less, or there's less middlemen in every area of our life. But this is the thing that makes
and that's why for us the community building aspect, the quality of the programming and the convening of like-minded people, whether it's people that are convening by age or by interest or by demography or by where they live, is so essential to our success.
Well, I want to talk to you about just issues that you see on the horizon. What are challenges that you see in the Jewish world, and exciting things that you see, sort of new initiatives, new opportunities? But first, I want to ask you a very basic question, which is, what makes a good fundraiser?
Relationships. It's all about relationships. It's about trust. It's about personality. It's about relationships. What makes Jonathan Ornstein so successful and allows you to have so many people. By the way,
I think I'm a terrible.
You're a world-class fundraiser, but it's about the relationships you build with all of those people, most of whom don't really know or understand or have any connection to the history of Krakow or the Jews of Krakow or even Poland. But they see in you someone who's doing life-changing work, who's passionate about what you do, who's totally transparent and authentic in what you're raising money for, and they believe in you. And if they believe in you and they believe in the cause and they believe in the mission, it's going to be much easier to raise money. And so, the depth of the relationship, the passion you show for the work you do, your ability to articulate why it is that you're raising money for that cause, and your ability to also listen and understand what the donor cares about is essential. I think the combination of those qualities, can make anybody a good fundraiser.
Well, first of all, thank you. That's really, really kind of you, and probably mostly untrue about me, at least. But we all see ourselves differently than the outside world sees us. But is there a challenge there? Because to me, sometimes I think there is, that you build these relationships. Can there sometimes be a challenge to then pivot and say you've become very, very close to this person, and then say, oh, wait a minute, but asking for money. You know what I mean? If you start on that, if you start with money, then that's one thing. It can become a friend. But you become friendly with somebody, and then you have to, to some degree, at the end of the day, you sort of have to say, oh, it's great hanging out with you and all this, and we really like each other, and our friendship is not based on some future ask or self-interest, but you're in a position that you can help my organization. You believe in what we're doing, and we need that help. I sometimes find it's complicated to turn that corner.
It's a delicate line to walk, and you appropriately and accurately identify the challenge. I think what makes a good fundraiser different than a bad fundraiser and different than a great fundraiser is your ability to walk that fine line. I often say to my staff, the most successful fundraiser is someone who can have a meeting with a donor and not need to make the ask. Because if you're able to go, if you come in and all you want to do is talk about the work you're doing and why people should give, you're not going to have the depth of relationship that they're going to really trust you. But if you can go in and talk about music and politics and food and wine and sports and the world and all the things that the donor cares about, and build that broader relationship beyond purely what it is that you're raising money for, and then find the right opportunity to include the information about the organization, by the end of the conversation, the donor's going to want to be telling you why they want to give to you. You're not going to have to make the ask, but how you build that relationship and walk that fine line and know when to push and when not to push is what makes the difference between a great fundraiser like Jonathan Ornstein and an average fundraiser like Mark Medin.
Oh yeah, sure. This is like I ran into Seinfeld the other day, so he's on my head that he talks about the bizarro universe. Everything is backwards, but thank you for that. So relationships, in other words, what makes a good fundraiser? Or relationships.
I mean, in 4 or 5 words: relationships, passion, authenticity, and mission. You combine those few words into an individual, you're going to be a great fundraiser.
I think I agree with you, and I think institutionally as well. I think that there are certain things we do, like our bicycle ride, which people go on this, and this is the same reason also. You guys and synagogues, Park Avenue Synagogue that you guys work very closely with. I know, they do amazing trips, and other places travel, but there are certain organizations that are doing trips, and I think we understand that nothing bonds you to an organization or to the other people that you travel with, or that you're with, that like travel.
No question about it. When you can get a donor to spend 4 days or a week or 10 days seeing the world in a unique way, it changes the relationship. And anybody can buy a plane ticket to come to Krakow, and they can even walk up to the JCC and kind of look inside. But unless you're coming on an organized mission, you don't get to have dinner with Jonathan and his beautiful wife. You don't get to have a Shabbos event. You don't get to meet the little kids in the kindergarten. A stranger doesn't get to walk up and go up to the second floor and see the kids playing in the kindergarten. But if you're coming on a UJA mission or a Park Avenue Synagogue mission or some other federation mission where you get access to unique experiences that differentiate between what your travel agent can do for you and what an organization can do for you, and you also build the relationships and the trust with donors when you spend that kind of time together.
Absolutely. It's life-changing. And I mean, we understand this in a larger sense. We understand that going to summer camp builds relationships and a depth that you can't, that beyond school. So that's very important. But what challenges are there? I mean, when I look at the Jewish world, and I look at the relationship with Israel, that it's difficult. Whatever you think of Israel, wherever you are politically, the idea that we have a homeland after 2,000 years, and that it's such a cause in many ways within the Jewish community, not only outside, that's its own thing, but within the Jewish community, I think is a real challenge. I think the fact that colleges, including very, very Jewish colleges, I have someone I'm friends with, her daughter, I'm friends with the daughter as well, but at NYU, and it's a challenging place to be pro-Israel. How does this play out over the years, that if you went to the top 50 colleges in the United States today, overwhelmingly, if not 45 of the 50, are going to generally be a place that are somewhat hostile toward not Israelis, but a pro-Israel sentiment. And what do you think about that? And is UJA thinking in the future? And how do we fix that?
Yes, and I have no idea. Although we're working on it in many ways. I think the Israel question. You talked earlier about 40 years ago, people gave automatically to federation wherever they lived in the country. That's changing today. 30 or 40 years ago, people supported Israel automatically if you're part of the Jewish community. There was no division. Today, there's tremendous division, but not only division in the American or global Jewish community, tremendous division in Israel. 30 or 40 years ago, Israeli Knesset members and Israeli political parties didn't battle each other the way they do today, didn't belittle each other the way they do today, didn't create the internal animosity the way they do today. It was all part of coming together for the greater cause of Israel. So that challenge of how do we unify around Israel is the single most challenging issue we face today. And it's on multiple levels. There's the political level, there's the security level, there's the religious level. All of those issues are causing a greater divide. And in the same way that America is becoming increasingly divided politically, support for Israel is becoming divided. And so how we ensure that the community stays strongly supportive and strongly understanding of Israel is critical. Increasingly difficult to be a Jewish kid on campus today, as you mentioned. And so the investment in birthright and in high school trips and in Hillel and in summer camp is really essential to ensure that young Jews today are getting a strong grounding, feeling pride and proud of being Jewish, understanding what it is to deal with Israel, but also understanding the complexity of Israel. Israel's not a simple story like it was, 30 or 40 years ago. And so how we teach that complexity so people can have nuanced understandings and still make strong arguments in support of Israel is essential. And so, on a macro level, I think that connection to Israel and the sense of how do we instill greater pride in young people today in being Jewish are the major challenges we face if we look out at the next 10, 20, 30 years. And it's not only because what does it mean for support for Israel, but it also what does it mean for support for the elderly in our community, for the Jewish day schools, because if fewer and fewer people are feeling connected to Jewish life and feeling connected to the importance of being a proud, active Jew who stands up and proudly declares, I'm a member of this community, there are going to be fewer people supporting philanthropies, whether it's federation or direct philanthropy that's involved in Jewish life. So maintaining that connection and creating a sense of pride in the beauty and the wonderful things of the Jewish world, I think is really essential to building and ensuring a future for our community. I'm bullish, I'm optimistic. People have been pessimistic for many years. We keep raising more money, young people keep getting involved. I'll never forget about 4 years ago, there was a Pew study that came out that, that was, eviscerated the engagement of young people in Jewish life. And what Pew used was membership in a Jewish institution. And very few young Jews are members. And the same day that came out, I was speaking at an event for a young Wall Street division. They had a planning meeting for our Wall Street dinner, which is a dinner that brings together 2,000 people. And there were 75 young Wall Street, professionals at a 7 p.m. meeting planning for our Wall Street dinner. And I said to them, how many of you are a paying member of a shul or a JCC or some other Jewish institution where membership is a criteria? And there were like 3 or 4 hands that went up. I said, so if you 75 young professionals got the call from the Pew Research study, you would have all failed. It doesn't mean that people are not involved in Jewish life. We just may not be measuring it the right way. And so we have to look for how do we measure engagement and participation in Jewish life beyond the old metric of do you belong to a synagogue, or do you belong to a JCC, and how do we create those vehicles for people to, riding a bike for the ride for the living is a great way to identify with Jewish life, support Jewish causes, and remember the Holocaust. That wouldn't come up on a study of saying to Jews, are you involved in Jewish life? Because there wouldn't be a choice. So we need to be as creative as we can be in finding multiple avenues and venues and vehicles for people to engage and participate with pride and passion in what it means to be part of the Jewish community.
Amen. And you're optimistic and I'm optimistic. And I never understand how Jews that are involved, especially people that are involved in the Jewish world, aren't optimistic. I think to be Jewish is to be optimistic, because if we weren't optimistic, we would have stopped this crazy thing of being Jewish that has caused that Jews have suffered so much over the years. Yet we're not stopping being Jewish. We double down on being Jewish despite the tragedy. So I think there's a built-in optimism. One more thing that I really wanted to mention with you, that when I look at the Jewish world, I think that our greatest failing today is that there are still Holocaust survivors in need, and that's also part of why we started this Holocaust Survivor Day that you're involved in. UJA is doing such great work with Holocaust survivors in New York and giving so much money, and that's such a big part of it. But the need is tremendous all around the world. So to me, if you would ask me what's our great failing, I would say as a people, the fact that there are any Holocaust survivors that are still in need to me is personally something that I find very difficult. But I want to really talk to you about what I think one of the greatest successes, which is and I don't mean the political aspect of the Abraham Accords, the United States and all that, but just something that you and I have spoken about so much, which is the idea of this relationship between Israel and the Emirates, what's happening in Dubai, what's going on. I was actually at a dinner with someone from Bahrain the other day at a mutual friend of ours' house, which was remarkable to see that the world that we grew up is changing, and what an exciting idea of what they're doing in Dubai. And I know that you're very involved in that.
Incredibly exciting. I was very fortunate last September. I left on a plane fully masked to fly to Dubai to celebrate Rosh Hashanah with a very small delegation that accompanied Rabbi Yehuda Sana, who's the head of the NYU Hillel and also the chief rabbi of the Emirates. And a small delegation left the day of the signing of the accord on the White House lawn, spent 4 days in Dubai with the Jewish community. It's so inspiring to see how a flourishing Jewish community is practicing Yiddishkeit, worshiping, learning, thinking, eating kosher in the heart of the Muslim world. I think there's so much opportunity coming out of the Abraham Accords, both for Israel to expand its reach and its relationships in the Arab world, for Jews to build personal relationships with Muslims, and for the Arab world to understand the value proposition that Jews and the Israeli economy and the Israeli tech scene bring to their world. The business opportunities are unparalleled. The excitement for Israelis to travel to the Emirates is incredible. Very, very exciting time to be part of that growing initiative to build a Jewish life, support a JCC, and ensure that the Jews in the Emirates can flourish like Jews all over the world are flourishing.
I think to me, the most exciting project going on in the Jewish world today is the birth of that, and watching it develop in real time. You have an excellent seat and are involved, and I'm so happy to see that you and that UJA recognize the importance of that, and I think that that'll pay dividends across for many people, Jew and non-Jew across the world. That's so exciting. Mark, as we start to draw to a close, I have just a few more questions. Are you on Team Latka or Team Hamantash?
I'm on Team Jewish.
Oh.
Latka, Hamantash, and Jewish food is good. I'm on Jewish holidays are good. I'm on every Jewish team.
All Jewish food. Okay, that's a first. I'll note that down. When the Pew study comes to us and asks us about all the research we've gathered about Jewish foods, I'm gonna fit that into a category. Don't worry. And Mark Medin, your 3 favorite films.
3 favorite films. I'm not a big film buff.
Oh.
I'm not a big film buff. I could make it up, but
okay.
Not a big film buff. Ask me about my 3 favorite sports games, my 3 favorite soccer matches, but I'll take a pass on the 3 favorite films.
Fair enough. A pass you shall receive. 3 favorite soccer teams?
Liverpool, and Liverpool.
Yeah, there we go. So Mark Medin, a man who never walks alone. Wait, is that the right?
There you go. You'll never walk alone if you love Liverpool. There you go. A man in Krakow who knows the Liverpool logo.
There we go. Mark Medin, my friend, thank you so much. This is absolutely fascinating. I'm so appreciative of the time you've given us, of the support of you and of UJA for the JCC. I couldn't imagine building Jewish life in Krakow without you and UJA being a part of it.
Jonathan, thank you for building Jewish life in Krakow. I couldn't imagine it without you. You are a single testament to what one person can achieve when they set their heart and their mind to taking on a challenge that nobody would have thought was possible, and really building an incredible, vibrant community for the Jews in Krakow, for the elderly survivors that are still there, for the young children that are going to be the future, and making a really special home for all those Jewish tourists that come to the region, and continue to do the great work you're doing and be as welcoming as you are to every Jew who visits Krakow, and share with them what you're doing and the importance of the project that you're leading. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Hope to see you soon. Be well.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.